Chapter 7, Lesson 3, Life in the Region. Today we're going to take a look at what it's like in Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean islands. In front of me I have my guided reading activity, which has 3 different sections that go along with what we're reading. The first is all about modern Mexico. The second is about modern Central America, and the third is the Caribbean islands. In each of those sections, it asks you in your guided reading activity to take a specific style of notes. You can see in the first part of Lesson 3, you're answering questions and filling in incomplete sentences about modern Mexico. So let's preview those questions. What is NAFTA and how has it affected the Mexican economy? Number 2, what are the major industries in Mexico? Number 3, what 2 cultures are blended to make Mexican culture? And number 4, what are the major problems facing Mexico today? So as we've previewed those questions, now when we're reading, we're looking specifically for those, and then if we need to, we can come back and reread to find those specific answers. In the second section, you're being asked to complete the table by filling in key facts about the economy. So you're looking to make a bullet-pointed list about the economy, the challenges, and the culture. You'll notice that all 3 of the sections we're reading about Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean islands are focused on these 3 aspects: economy, the challenges facing those areas, and the culture of those areas. Lastly, you're going to use your textbook to answer the following questions about the economies and cultures of the Caribbean islands. So specific questions that go right along with the reading. Let's jump into it for today. Our objectives: analyze the economy, culture, and challenges of modern Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean islands. Modern Mexico. When you think of Mexico, you might think of Mexican food like tacos. You might think of mariachi musicians playing lively music and wearing large sombreros. But Mexico has a rich and complex culture and is a rising economic power. Now, if you'd like to see what this economic development is like in Mexico, go to your online textbook and click this video. It tells the story of what's happening near the northern border of Mexico and the relationship that Mexico has with the United States and how that influences its economy. That's really helpful in terms of understanding how this next section of our reading goes if you click and watch this video. Back to our reading. The economy. Mexico has close economic ties to the United States and Canada. These ties are a result of joining with them in the North American Free Trade Agreement. About 80% of Mexico's exports go to NAFTA partners. More than 60% of Mexico's imports come from members of NAFTA. Most of this trade is with the United States. Now, NAFTA has since been replaced and has been kind of modernized. It's called the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which is a further development of NAFTA to benefit, most likely from our perspective, the United States, as we're working to trade freely with Canada and Mexico, the countries that border us. The reason why we want to have that free trade and not put taxes or tariffs on those goods that are going across different borders is because that slows down and actually causes less economic growth and economic activity. So by having free trade between these countries, you're hopefully benefiting those countries and having more production happening so that more people are making money in that way and they're able to support themselves and their families through that. In recent decades, Mexico has developed its manufacturing industry. Factories account for about 1/3 of Mexico's output. Some of them are maquiladoras. These are factories where parts made elsewhere are assembled into products. Many of the factories are located in northern Mexico. The goods are then exported. So if you think about that, in the United States, there are different companies that make parts and then they ship those parts to Mexico. In Mexico, these maquiladoras, these factories are where these goods are put together and then they're shipped back to the United States. So you're thinking, well, why would they take the time to ship those to Mexico if they could just put the parts together in the United States? Well, if Mexico is a less developed country and there are less things in the form of like minimum wage and standards for work, you can actually pay people less in Mexico. Not to say that that's right. You can pay people less in Mexico to do the same job that they would do in the United States. Therefore, if you can pay somebody less and charge the same amount for that product, you're increasing your profit margin, which is what a lot of companies in the United States do. Some of those companies get criticized in the United States and people boycott buying their products because they've shipped their jobs to Mexico to take advantage of the lower wages down there. People like to see things that are made in the USA and are proud of those things, and they don't like to see companies that are going to take their work somewhere else when those jobs could benefit the people in the United States. To give the people of Mexico credit, they're willing to work for those lower wages in order to have a job to provide for themselves, where a lot of times in the United States we're maybe too proud to work for that low of a wage. We continue reading. The goods are then exported. Food processing is another major industry in Mexico. The textile and clothing industries are important too. Mexico also has heavy manufacturing producing iron, steel, and automobiles. Farming remains important. Cotton and wheat are grown in the dry north using irrigation. Along the southeastern coast, farms produce coffee, sugarcane, and fruits. On the central plateau, farmers grow corn, wheat, and fruit and vegetables. In the poor South, many farmers engage in subsistence farming, growing just enough food to feed themselves and their families. Service industries are also important in Mexico. Banking helps finance economic growth. A major service industry is tourism. Visitors from around the world come to visit ancient Maya cities to see architecture of Spanish colonial cities, and tourists also come to relax in the resorts along the warm and scenic tropical coasts. Culture. Mexicans are proud of their blend of Spanish and native cultures. I think that answers one of our questions. They have long celebrated the folk arts and reflected native traditions. In the early 1900s, several Mexican painters drew on these traditions to paint impressive murals celebrating Mexico's history and people. Murals are large paintings made on walls. The Ballet Folklorico performs Mexican dances as well. Sports reflect Mexico's ties to Spain and the United States. Soccer is popular there, as it is in Spain. So is baseball. Challenges. With nearly 9 million people, Mexico is one of the largest cities in the world. Including the city's suburbs, it has more than 21 million people, nearly 20% of Mexico's population. Overcrowding is a major problem due to this growth. Pollution is another problem, particularly air pollution. Because Mexico City is at a high elevation, the air has less oxygen than at sea level. This makes breathing difficult for some people in normal circumstances, but conditions in Mexico City are not normal. A great deal of exhaust from cars and factories is released into the air. The polluted air is held in place by the mountains around the city. Sometimes a layer of cold air high in the atmosphere keeps the pollution from rising. The result can be a serious threat to health. Another challenge facing Mexico is the power of criminals who sell illegal drugs. Drug lords or cartels use violence to fight police and to intimidate people. Mexico has mounted a major effort to battle this problem with some success. Poverty is yet another major challenge facing Mexico. Anywhere from 1/5 to nearly half of Mexico's people are poor. Continued economic growth would help and seem to be working. Some economists are predicting that Mexico will overtake Brazil in the 2010s as the leading economy in Latin America. Let's go back to those set of questions. Number one says, what is NAFTA and how has it affected the Mexican economy? Again, NAFTA is the free trade agreement between the United States and Canada and Mexico. Because of NAFTA, about 80% of Mexico's exports go to NAFTA partners, and more than 60% of Mexico's imports come from NAFTA partners. So the imports and exports that Mexico has is directly related to the economy of the United States and Canada, which is hopefully beneficial to those workers and those businesses in Mexico itself. Number two, what are the major industries in Mexico that are benefiting from that free trade? The USMCA, which is the updated version of NAFTA. We learned that manufacturing is big because companies are actually sending their parts to Mexico, where in the maquiladoras, Mexican workers are putting those things together, then shipping them back to be sold in the United States and Canada. Agriculture is big because of the warm climate. You can grow all sorts of different types of crops and fruits throughout the year. Service industries are developing in terms of banking and tourism. Number three, what two cultures are blended to make Mexican culture? They're very proud of their native culture and also have an influence of the Spanish culture because of the Spanish settlements in this region. That's why they speak Spanish as well. Number four, what are four major problems facing Mexico? We learn about population growth in major cities. That causes a lot of overcrowding. That overcrowding can lead to pollution. There are criminal organizations such as cartels, and about 1/5 to 1/2 of the country is in poverty. As you read through the next section in modern Central America, you're going to fill in the three columns that are listed here: the economy of Central America, the challenges facing Central America, and the culture of Central America. If you'd like to, pause this video and read on your own, or simply listen to Mr. Shane as he continues. Modern Central America. The nations of Central America have fewer resources than Mexico, probably because they're smaller in terms of the landmass and area. Mexico is the largest of those countries in Central America. The region must also deal with political issues. Central America's economies. The countries of Central America long showed dependence or too much reliance on cash crops. In recent years, some have begun to escape this trap. A good sign is the growth of manufacturing. This consists mostly of food processing and production of clothing and textiles. Tourism has grown as well. Tourists come to Belize and Guatemala to see ancient Maya cities. They travel to Costa Rica to see the varied plants and animals in its rainforest. And Mr. Shane can tell you that one of the times in high school he actually got to take a trip to Costa Rica for Spanish and science class, and with a number of other classmates, we got to go ziplining in the rainforest, go whitewater rafting in the rainforest. We got to see a live volcano in the rainforest and attend the side of this volcano where these were this pool and river and hot springs. So it was really cool to be embraced by this just natural beauty of the world that God has created, and the wonders of the touristy type of activities you can do there to experience that creation. So they traveled to Costa Rica to see those plants and animals in the rainforest. It was an epic trip. I recommend if you have the chance that you travel to Costa Rica. They also have really, really good coffee. Panama benefits economically from the Panama Canal. Working for additional benefit, Panama initiated a major building program to expand the canal so it can accept larger cargo ships. High rates of population growth create an economic challenge, however. The countries need to grow their economies fast to provide enough jobs. One of the hope for promoting growth is trade agreements between the countries of the region and other countries. In the 2000s, the United States and the Dominican Republic signed a series of agreements with 5 Central American countries: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. The agreement, called the Central American Free Trade Agreement, was the first agreement among the United States and smaller developing economies. CAFTA-DR creates a free trade zone that lowers trade barriers between the countries. Often, however, such agreements help the United States more than other countries. So because these smaller countries want to benefit from free trade, they agree to trade with the United States. Because the United States is so much bigger in terms of the resources it has, it often benefits more than these smaller countries. They're still going to participate in it because it creates more jobs and more opportunities for economic growth, but a lot of times the larger economy is just able to support itself better with these smaller trade agreements. Challenges facing the region. Another challenge to the area is natural disasters. Earthquakes and hurricanes can have a devastating effect on the region's fragile economies. Nicaragua was making some serious economic progress in the 1990s when Hurricane Mitch hit. This destruction set the nation's economy back significantly. The need to solve long-standing political problems also holds the region back. Civil wars in the 1980s and 1990s are over, but some of the issues that caused them remain unsolved. If these issues again become more severe, conflict may resume. The last section that you're filling out is about the culture. The culture of Central America is strongly influenced by European and native traditions. Spanish is the chief language in all countries except Belize, where English is the official language. English is spoken in many cities in the region, as well in rural Guatemala. Native languages are common. The population is mainly of mixed European and native heritage. Some people of African and Asian descent live there as well. Most people in the region are Roman Catholics, and in recent years, however, Protestant faiths have gained followers. That should have you finished with filling in the economy, challenges, and cultural aspects of Central America. And now we're looking to the Caribbean islands. Let's read through those questions again to preview. We'll read and then you can come back and answer at the end of our reading or answer in the midst of our reading to make sure that you check for that comprehension. Number 1, name the economic challenges and their causes for each of the following Caribbean countries. So as you hear about these countries, Puerto Rico, Cuba, Haiti, we're looking specifically for economic challenges to fill in the blanks here. Number 2, what makes Trinidad and Tobago, there's a fun word, Trinidad and Tobago, one of the more successful economies of the Caribbean? So here you're looking for a success story. Number 3, what is the word remittance? Number 4, why are so many different languages spoken in the Caribbean? And number 5, how have the Caribbean islands influenced world music? Again, we want to look at those questions so we know what we're looking for in our reading. And I'm guessing just because of the order of those questions, that's also going to match up with the order in which they're answered in our reading. If you'd like, here'd be a good time to pause the video to read on your own or continue to follow along and listen on page 220 and 221. The Caribbean Islands. The Caribbean islands are mostly small countries with small populations and few resources. Although they have a rich and vibrant culture, they face many challenges. Island economies. The biggest challenge for the island is to develop economically. Many people on the island are poor. Even in Puerto Rico, a large share of the population lives in poverty. One reason for the poverty is high unemployment. One reason for that poverty is high unemployment. Fill that in. Cuba. Cuba's economy is in poor conditions after decades of communism. The government has been unable to promote economic development. It relied on aid first from the Soviet Union and more recently from Venezuela. Conditions are worse now than in the 1980s, and Cubans also have very little political freedom. Those who criticize the government are often arrested. In Cuba, they practice communism, which is often associated with today socialism, the idea that everybody can have and get the same thing. And when you're doing that, you're allowing the government to kind of proceed over all those decisions in terms of how you run your business, what you can buy, what's available at the stores, what's available in the market. And when that happens, you eliminate the creativity and production of people and the competition of people to promote that economic development. So because communism and socialism have failed in countries like Cuba, other parts of the world are a lot less likely to embrace those type of activities moving forward. That's an answer to this one here. What are the economic challenges? Well, Cuba has used communism and the government hasn't been able to solve those problems that would be allowed people to have more economic choices and freedoms and competition if they could run things themselves, such as in a capitalist economy. Haiti. In Haiti, a history of poor political leadership has held back economic development. Haiti ranks among the world's poorest nations. Poverty is not the country's only problem. Widespread disease is another threat. In addition, many as 1 in 8 Haitians have left the country. Many of those who emigrated were among Haiti's most educated peoples. This loss hurts efforts to improve the economy. Finally, the country has not yet recovered from a deadly 2010 earthquake. Despite these problems, Haiti's people are determined to succeed. There's a long list of things going on in Haiti in terms of having poverty and poor political leadership for economic development. A lot of times when people get educated or get to a level where they have a certain level of skill or education, they actually leave the country to seek better opportunity elsewhere because of the poor state. This actually hurts the country in the long term because the people who are educated that could drive economic development here are actually going somewhere else and not allowing that money to stay within their own country. And major earthquakes and natural disasters can hold those countries back again. Trinidad and Tobago, number 2. Trinidad and Tobago has one of the more successful economies in the region. Sales on its oil and natural gas have funded economic development. Its location near Venezuela and Brazil has helped make its ports very busy. Small Caribbean islands have had more political success than larger ones. The governments are democratic and stable, but the economies are plagued by few resources and poverty. So in Trinidad and Tobago, because they have the oil and natural gas energy resources, they have a successful economy in what is an area where a lot of times these small island nations don't have these booming economies. Remittance, number 3. Here it comes. Another important economic factor in the region is remittance. A remittance is money sent back to the homeland by people who migrated someplace else to find work. Many Dominicans came to the United States for work and send money home to support their families. So when somebody leaves to go find better wages somewhere else, they send that money back to support their family because in their own country, the wages aren't that great. Tourism is a major part of the economy of several islands. Resorts in the Bahamas, Jamaica, and other islands invite tourists to come and relax in pleasant surroundings. The resorts often separate tourists from the lifestyle of islanders, but they provide jobs for island citizens. Island cultures. Let's look at answer number 4 and 5 here. The culture of the Caribbean islands show a mix of mainly European and African influences. Large numbers of Asians also came to some of the islands in the 1800s and 1900s. Those from China went mainly to Cuba. South Asians settled in Jamaica, Guadeloupe, and Trinidad and Tobago. The languages spoken on the islands reflect their colonial heritage. English is the language of former British colonies such as the Bahamas and Jamaica. Spanish is spoken in Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. English is also taught in Puerto Rico schools because of their ties to the United States. It's a U.S. territory. French and Creole, a blend of French and African languages, are spoken in Haiti. That answers number 4. Number 5, here it comes. The Caribbean islands have strongly influenced world music. Much of the music blends African and European influences. Cuba is famous for its salsa and Jamaica for its reggae. Both forms of music rely on complex drum rhythms. Reggae has become popular around the world not only for its musical qualities, but also for the lyrics that protest poverty and the lack of equal rights. If you've ever heard of Bob Marley, his music is in the form of reggae and does just that. Protest poverty and the lack of equal rights. Thanks for following along and reading with Mr. Shane. Thanks for filling in your guided reading activity. God's blessings.